In this video, we're going to talk about reference angles. Reference angle is the angle associated with the terminal side and the x-axis. And however, it has to be a positive and acute angle when the original angle was put in the standard position. So let's see, what do we mean by that? If you look at the diagram on the left, we have the angle theta here, but it's the shaded area over here that's between, this is the terminal side of the angle theta, and this part is the x-axis. So that shaded area is the reference angle. I love reference angles because it makes everything so much easier when it's positive and when it's an acute angle, right? So how do we find it? So easy. Graph the angles first. That's 150. And notice that the acute angle associated with x-axis is actually here. So it's 180 minus 150. That positive and acute angle is my reference angle. 315 is here. So it's simply 360 minus 315 equals 45 degrees, right? Because it's really here I'm looking at. Next one is negative. Pay attention to signs. Negative is clockwise. So I swing over. That's my negative 240. Then the x-axis associated with it is 180. So I just use 240 minus 180. 60 degrees is my reference angle. Got it? So very easy. Find the x-axis, subtract from the angle given, or use x-axis degree measure, subtract the use the angle, subtract the x-axis degree measure. Okay. Radian is the same way. If it makes you comfortable, convert it to degrees. If you're comfortable operating it based on radian, go right ahead. So 300 degrees is somewhere here. This is it. So we're looking at this. That's 2 pi minus 5 pi over 3. I do suggest that you, when you do the calculation, you stick to radian so that you don't need to convert back and forth and create opportunities for yourself to make mistakes, right? So this one, if you want to graph it out, it's here. So we're looking to here, but one of the you can convert it into 210 degrees, but I just like to see that 7 pi over 6 pi is really 6 pi plus pi over 6. 6 pi over 6 is 1 pi. So that's gone already. So it's really the reference degree is right here. So just rewrite it, right? Same thing with here. 5 pi over 4, so there is a 4 in 5. Then just subtract the 4 from there, so it becomes 1 pi over 4, negative 1 pi over 4. And so you know your pi over 4. That's it. And if you want to do the traditional way, you just rewrite it into degrees, graph it. So negative angles goes this way. So this is your negative angle. So your reference angle is right here. It's still the acute positive angle formed by the terminal side and the x-axis, right? Really easy, really simple. Do not overcomplicate it, and that will help you make life so much easier. So the next part, it says here, recall the signs of the functions in each quadrant. Every time we talk about signs is all students take calculus, right? Then use reference angles and the trigonometry function values for angles in special right triangles to find each trigonometry angles. So in other words, how do we use reference angles to make our life easier? So sine 120 degrees. The first thing I want you to know is to find the sines. 180 degrees is second quadrant. In second quadrant, I'm looking at for sine is positive. So then I know this, that's the first step. Second step, I need to find the reference angle. Reference angle is simply 180 minus 120, that's 60 degrees. I know sine 60, if you use your calculator, is 1/2. Because my final answer should be positive, that's it, 1/2. Okay, secant, same thing. 225, first of all, secant is related to cosine. So cosine is only positive in, for 225 is in the third quadrant, right? So in third quadrant, I'm expecting it to be, so we're talking about third quadrant, so I expect it to be negative. So the final answer has to be negative. So let's see. 225 is, the reference angle is also 45 degrees. So secant 225 should be 1 over cosine 225, which is negative 1 over cosine 45. Cosine 45 is root 2 over 2, so the reciprocal of that is 2 root 2. The final answer, if I simplify that, final answer should be negative root 2. Okay? The third one, the ninth, question 9, tangent 11 pi over 6. So 11 pi, if it's 12 pi, is 2 pi. 12 pi over 6 is 2 pi. So it's a little bit less than 2 pi. That means it's fourth quadrant. In fourth quadrant, tangent has to be a negative. So fourth quadrant, negative. And then find the reference angle. I already talked about it. It's pi over 6. Right? Yeah, so pi over 6 is 30 degrees. So now you take the tangent 30 degrees. That should give you root 3. But because your final answer has to be negative, you just add the negative sign in the front. That's it. I'm going to make you do number 10 by yourself. See if you can get the final answer. And that should be it. Pause the video if you have to. So the last part of this page, again, is definition of quadrantal angles. It's just a fancy way to call an angle where the terminal side ends on one of the axes. So if you look at the first angle when it's 0, right here. So one side is one side of the angle is on the x-axis, and the second side doesn't go anywhere, stays in the same place. And when theta is 90 degrees, or pi over 2, one side is on x-axis, the other side is on y. 180 degrees, 270 degrees, and then 360 goes back to the same as 0 degrees. That's just a quick definition. It's called quadrantal angles. Unit circle. It's the most important concept in trigonometry. The entire study of trigonometry is centered around unit circle. Definition. A unit circle is simply that, a circle. However, there is a special characteristic of it, which is the radius has to be 1. Radius of 1. Okay? So in other words, right here is 1. And here is 1, here is 1, and here is 1. Because the radius is 1, if you think about it, sine theta would be opposite. If you look at this, there's a P here on the circle. So sine theta is here. Theta is opposite, which is y over hypotenuse is 1 because this is a radius, just like the same thing in all of these green parts, right? And so let's just simplify that. So sine becomes my y-axis. By the same definition, cosine, which is adjacent over hypotenuse. So cosine is my x-axis. It's my x coordinate. Tangent is simply y over x. Nothing changes. Everything else gets flipped over. Find the reciprocals. Then you've got it. Okay? Now I'm going to erase this stuff I put in there. Okay. Now let's see the next conclusion. So notice that y equals sine theta, x equals cosine theta. So the coordinates of P went from x, y, we learned that in algebra, to now it's cosine theta and sine theta. So we're talking about the same things. It's still the coordinate for P, but now we're just expressing it differently. Okay? Unit circle. Unit circle is frequently used to map special right triangles, 30 degrees, 45 degrees, 60 degrees. So familiar, right? And then as well as their multiples. So I can have 0 degrees. 0 is the same as 360, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 degrees, so on and so forth. Okay. Let's look at some of the practices at the bottom. Complete the unit circle reference, then use the circle to find the exact value of the trigonometry. I don't know why my sheet is tilted. So, okay. I made a separate video of the reference angle. Of the reference sheet for the unit circle. It's really important to watch that video first, and then once you have that, you can complete the unit circle and then bring that sheet with you and then complete the practice here. Okay, but I'm gonna go through it really quickly. You should again watch that video first. So let's go. Sine 135, reference angle is 45 degrees. Sine 135 second quadrant should be positive. So then sine 45 should equal sine 45, and that should be root 2 over 2. Okay. Secant 180. So this is a quadrantal. Remember, secant is cosecant related to cosecant, so that's the reciprocal. Cosecant, cosine 180 equals -1. Cotan -300, so reference angle should be 60 degrees. Cotan is 1 over 10. 60 degrees is in first quadrant, so we know it's positive. And that would give us 1 over root 3 over 3. That's the final answer. Cosecant 120. So reference angle, it should be 60 degrees. Cosecant is sine. Sine 120. Sine 120 is in the second quadrant. Second quadrant should be positive. So sine 120 should be sine 60. It's the same thing. And that's root 3 over 2. So you flip it, it's 2 over root 3. Okay. Tangent 270. Be careful with this one. This is a quadrantal angle. So think about it. 270 is this, let me change the color, is right here. That's where the terminal angle ends, right? It starts from the x-axis and it ends at 270. That's 270. Now any y value, so 10 equals x over y. The y value on this part is 0. So y equals 0. Therefore, anything is divided by 0 is undefined. So when tangent has a quadrantal angle, there's an undefined value to it. Number 16, cosine negative 150. Reference angle is 30 degrees, and the 150 is in the second quadrant, so cosine has to be negative, right? So then we simply do cosine negative 150 should be the opposite of cosine 30, and cosine 30 is root 3 over 2. Put the negative sign in the front. You are done. All right, I'm gonna stop here. So you keep finishing this, pause the video. I will write down all the answers here and I'll come back. Okay, I hope you got the answers right. I also wrote down the steps on the left-hand side. Let me use number 16 as an example. When you're asked to find the trigonometry trigonometry values of a certain angle, so what you do is that you find the reference angle first. So right here, for number 16, I found the reference angle is 30 degrees, right? Then you determine for this original angle, which quadrant is it in? Use all students take calculus to figure out the signs. Then you would know your final answer has to be negative in this example. Then you find the value for the reference angle. In that case, it's negative 3 over 2. Then make sure that you check the signs as your last step. Then you're done. So I listed out, but all of these 4 steps are very sequential, should come in pretty naturally. That reference angle is provided to you as a way to simplify things. You find the value, but make sure you check the signs, knowing where the original theta, which quadrant it lies in. All right, guys, it's a lot of information, but if you understand it, everything boils down to something really, really simple, and it becomes very repetitive. So actually it makes life a lot easier. Do not memorize. You've got a calculator in your hand. You've got a good brain. You understand how one thing is derived from the other, whether it's the unit circle or reference angles, so on and so forth. And then you're all good. One last word. Be careful. Be careful with tangent of how do you spell quadrantal angles? Meaning tangent 270 it's undefined, right? So that's just the last thing we need to worry about. Then that's it, guys. I'll see you in class. Bye.